Any tourist can visit most of the countries of the Middle East: Egypt, Israel, Qatar. Dubai in particular has become one of the centers of the modern world, a kind of New York in the desert. This status has become a hallmark of the United Arab Emirates, and now attracts tourists, business, technology, finances, everything you need to stay afloat when high fuel prices stop pulling you ahead. Saudi Arabia used to be a rather closed and, because of this, a mysterious state. But time is running, and there is no escape from reality, which means that it's time to move forward. And a part of this movement are the projects that are close to the neighbors. Entire cities that are becoming new beacons in the desert. One of these beacons should become Jeddah, a city located on the shores of the Red Sea. It is assumed that having received seaports, business centers, and residential zones of various classes, Jeddah will become the largest economic center of the Red Sea, as well as an important transportation hub on the way between the oceans of Asia and the Mediterranean Sea. The Suez Canal is located to its north. And of course, any crown, especially the one originally called Kingdom City, must have a gemstone. It was found quickly: the Kingdom Tower project, now known as Jeddah Tower, the future pearl of the city and the tallest skyscraper in the world. The idea of building a super skyscraper arose almost immediately with the idea of creating a new economic center in the late 2000s. Moreover, the Kingdom Tower was supposed to break the record of Dubai's Burj Khalifa and get an absolutely incredible height, about 1 mile or 1600 meters. Therefore, the building was sometimes called the Mile High Tower. However, ambitions turned out to be too expensive, even for the rich construction companies involved in the project. Several $billion in context of the global economic crisis was a bit too much. They rejected the idea of a mile, reducing the approximate height to 1 kilometer. Although it is worth noting that the exact height remains a secret, and we will know it only when the building receives its spire. And this is quite acceptable. Even with such a reduction, the tower will still be about 180 meters or 600 feet higher than its rival from Dubai. Preliminary work began in 2008, when soil research began in the desert area north of the city. It was necessary to prove that this place is even capable of withstanding such a, putting it mildly, massive structure. According to a number of sources, in addition to financial limits, it was the ground constraints that forced the builders to reduce its height. The main architects of the project, after a lot of tenders and proceedings, became the Adrian Smith Gordon Gill Company, or ASGG for short. Entering the competition with many distinguished architectural firms, the company won thanks to the rich experience of building similar objects. In their portfolio are the skyscrapers such as Jinmao Tower in Shanghai, Zifeng Tower in Nanjing, Trump International in Chicago, the famous eco-friendly Pearl River Tower in Guangzhou, and, as a cherry on the cake, yes, the Burj Khalifa Tower is also their child. The construction contract for about $1.23 billion was signed in 2011. Moreover, this sum was about $300 million smaller than the amount spent on the construction of Burj Khalifa. This fact is explained mainly by the technology already developed by the architects in this field, as well as cheaper labor compared to Dubai. Then, in 2011, the world saw the first images of the future building and found out the height, about 1 kilometer. After all the preparation works were completed, the direct construction of the skyscraper began in 2013. The first facilities started rising above the desert by the fall of 2014. So, what are they up to? The construction of any skyscraper is a serious engineering challenge, and the higher it gets, the more difficult the task. In this context, Jeddah Tower is a record not only in height, but also in complexity. Arises a question of sustainability of such a huge building, its ability to resist the effects of wind. How to organize transportation of people in such a tower, so that without entangling the entire building with elevator shafts, the traveling speed was still optimal. No one will be pleased with the prospect of an hour-long journey from the upper floors to the entrance below. The problem of elevators, however, was already solved during the construction of other skyscrapers, occupying places in the top of the world's tallest. The best distribution of shafts, perfect logistics, two-story elevator schemes and their number, about 60, in principle make it possible to forget about efficiency limitations. One of the most difficult is the problem of excessive load on the concrete core, which in fact holds the entire building like a spine. This problem was solved in a difficult but obvious way. The core gets bigger in cross-section closer to the base. This increases the need for interior space, so the entire building also expands at the basement. Such a solution, coupled with surface designs, improves aerodynamics and reduces the effects of wind on the building. It can be called an alternative to a similar construction solution in Burj Khalifa, where instead of smoothly changing the section area, a stepped architecture was used, as if the skyscraper is a bunch of narrow towers built alongside one another. A whole layer of research and development is associated with countering the effects of wind and swaying. The use of better aerodynamics of surfaces, rigid materials, means of sway suppression, the standard set. But as it turns out, at such high altitudes, classic constructions are still subject to swaying. Even the usual tapered towers with spires do not solve the problem, not to mention the classic rectangular objects. They would be rolling from side to side like trees on the wind, with all the consequences for people inside. That is why the building has such a complicated spire, which like a knife plunges into the sky. This is not only a stylish solution, but also a technical necessity. The bases of the two Arabian towers are also similar, 3 beams located on a massive concrete pad. This base is one of the largest in the world. The fact is that under the sands of the coast there are quite soft rocks that may sag under the huge mass of the building. Therefore, it was reinforced with a group of powerful piles and a foundation several meters thick with an area of several thousand square meters. It is similar in design to the Burj Khalifa foundation in similar conditions, but due to the greater mass of the building, it is larger. It is assumed that Jeddah Tower will weigh about 900,000 tons. That is very, very heavy. The radial structure of the building itself allows to simultaneously increase the area of glazing, which means the increase of the number of windows and beautiful views from inside, and, in parallel, optimal rigidity and stability. Inside, the skyscraper will be full of usual for modern ultra-high building solutions, residential areas, hotels, offices, recreation areas and observation platforms, as well as the unusual innovations. One of the most bright, of course, will be the platform that looks like a helipad. However, this outdoor balcony, called the Sky Terrace, will receive a diameter of about 30 meters and will actually be a huge viewing platform. Being located at a mark of about 150th floor, it will be opening a view of the vast territories around the building. In total, the construction of 167 floors is planned for Jeddah Tower. In principle, the tower will have a practically self-sufficient infrastructure, realizing the concept of a vertical city that modern architects are desperately trying to implement. A special task was to create an infrastructure around the tower. It stands in fact in the middle of the desert near Jeddah. For the objects in direct proximity of the tower, 23 hectares of land were reserved. In these areas, it is planned to build malls, parks, residential and commercial facilities, mainly of the luxury class, so in general a fairly standard set. The area received the name Jeddah Tower Waterfront District. However, the shining story of the building and its prospects are overshadowed by a multitude of problems that, ironically, are mostly not connected to the complexity of construction of this superstructure. The work was being delayed and conducted in difficult conditions almost from the very beginning. A heavy blow to the project were the arrests of the leaders of the main construction participants in 2017. Kingdom Holdings Company and Saudi bin Laden Group ended up in a limbo, which almost led to the disruption of the whole construction. The deadlines for the building's completion slipped to 2020. Although this period too will hardly be realized, the work is practically frozen. For now, a 65-story concrete shell is standing in the middle of the desert. Yeah, not a very positive ending of the story. Meanwhile, time goes on, and as the builders in Jeddah are trying to resume work, their competition on the other side of the Arabia are striving for even greater heights. We'll see what comes out of it. And for now, subscribe to the channel. There is a lot of interesting things on the horizon.